Welcome to Uncorked, Wine, Business, and Life with Bill Green. I'm Jerrold Colton, along with Bill Green from beautiful Boca Raton, Florida, and we have another very special guest today, Bill.
We do. My good friend, new friend, we are in a wine club together, Fred Fraenkel. And Fred, because even though we're in Boca Raton, Florida, we have deep Philly roots. And Fred grew up in Allentown. And, like just everybody else in Allentown, then, got their MBA from Wharton.
Mm-hmm. Not exactly the Billy Joel song.
Not the Billy Joel song. Yeah. But Fred, I really want you to tell us about those early years and how you became one of the most iconic Wall Street bankers for a long, long time.
Well, I don't think I did, but I'll tell you how I got to where I'm going.
That little company like Lehman Brothers. I mean, you got all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, all kinds of. Yeah, the common denominator is I was lots of places because I just couldn't hold a job. I had to keep finding the next thing to do. So that kept a fire behind me going. I was in Allentown, and I grew up in Allentown, and I went to college 10 miles away in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is what the Billy Joel song was really about. It was really about Bethlehem, which was a steel town, but it didn't rhyme in his song.
It didn't fit
so Allentown did a lot better, yeah. And there was all kinds of overtones. So, and then I made a huge move all the way down to Philadelphia for graduate school. So I was
an hour and a half.
I had a 60-mile ring around me for the first 24 years of my life. I didn't get out of that ring, but I had gone to Lehigh for undergraduate, and another man went to Lehigh for undergraduate, and both of us went to Wharton. So I stayed in touch with him, and we were getting near the end of our second year, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to be an investment banker." And I said, "Well, I don't really want to be an investment banker." He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "What are you good at?" I said, "Well, I'm pretty good at going to school." He said, "Oh, there's a job like that. It's called security analyst. You study about stuff, you write reports, you tell people. Instead of paying tuition, they pay you a whole lot of money." I said, "Oh, that's great. That's the first good thing I've heard since I've been here." And so I went to the library, and Institutional Investor Magazine had just rolled out this magazine with the All-America research team. And somebody was number one in every category, which is all industries. And so they had a cover, and everyone's in a football jersey, and they're like standing there, and this is the All-America team. And I said, "Wow, this is so cool. This is what I want to do." So I went through the whole process of everything I had learned to try and get on a job track to be a security analyst on Wall Street. And back then, when the first All-Star team came out, the firm that was number one was Oppenheimer. So I wanted to go to Oppenheimer. And I did all the networking, and my uncle knew one of the partners there, and he said, "I'll get you an interview." So I come into this interview, and I sit down with this guy, and the guy said, "Why do you want to be an analyst?" And I give him this MBA answer that I had prepared. And he stands up and points at me and goes, "This interview's over, and you're never going to be an analyst. The only reason you want to be an analyst is to make a lot of money. That's the only reason you'll get up early and do the stuff you have to do." And I said, "Whoa." So then by myself, I got an interview at an up-and-coming research department, really wasn't that good then, called Goldman Sachs. And I go into Goldman Sachs, and there's this guy sitting there, and he kind of looks like my grandfather, and I sit down with him, and he said, "Why do you want to be a security analyst?" And my life passes in front of me. Oh my God, do I tell him to make a lot of money, or do I give my MBA answer? So I look at him, and I said, "I'm going to give him my MBA answer," and I do. And he goes, "Wow, that sounds good. We'll have you come back to New York and talk to people." So I go back to New York. 7 interviews later, because I didn't know that I was entering the job market in one of the biggest bear markets in history, 73, 74. And no one was giving jobs, and Goldman Sachs had decided that they were going to hire one MBA. So after 7 different interviews, it was down to me and a guy from Harvard. And they had decided that the guy from Harvard was getting the job. And I go back in for the 8th time, and I'm sitting down again with this guy who is the administrative head of research, who looked like my grandfather from the first interview. And he's about to tell me I didn't get the job, and knock, knock, knock on the door. And the partner in charge of research walks in, and he says, I need your bond tables because I have to value my bond portfolio. And I look at him and I go, oh, I actually can do that. My parents bought me this fancy calculator for my graduation, and I can do that for you. And he brings it over, and I give him all the values, and he goes, this would be a good young man to have around here. And he walks out. And the guy from Harvard still doesn't know why he didn't get the job. So that was like a real sort of killer.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, and I'll give myself credit because I was willing to put my hand up and say I can do that. But other than that, it was just pure luck, 100%.
But you had to get there in the first place.
Yeah.
Be in that room. Get to the final interview. But there are a lot of things in that, and lessons for everybody. Yeah. So you get your first job then on Wall Street.
Yeah, and
at a little firm called Goldman Sachs.
If what?
A little firm called Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I don't know if you want me to go through my whole career, because you can ask me other stuff too. But the next interesting step is when I left Goldman Sachs, because a good friend of mine, the first boss I ever had, and when I had him, he was not a good friend of mine as a boss, but over the next 50 years, he's been a really good friend, was Leon Cooperman. He was running research at Goldman Sachs. And so
and Leon lives in our neighborhood here.
Yeah.
He doesn't drink wine, so I never became friends with him.
No, he doesn't drink wine. Yeah. But so he and another guy named Bill Keeley were building a great research department, and I didn't have any idea, but that was going to come back to be unbelievably valuable to me later on, watching them do that. And the people that they had there, the people we were there with, were amazing. Really, they all turned out to be big, famous people. And I had gotten a call from my father and my uncle, and they had put some of our family's money into this like crazy ass company in Philadelphia that was one of the first companies that was inventing cellular technology. And there was nothing. There wasn't a flip phone. There wasn't anything. There was no Dynatec. There was nothing.
Are we still in the 70s, or we're in the 80s
now? The 70s. Okay. 70s. And they put money in, and the scientists spent all the money. And they said, we don't know what to do. Should we just pull the cork, or should we give them more money? And they said, why don't you and your brother get on the Metroliner and come down to Philly and ask them questions and tell us what we should do. So we do all that, come back, and I say, this could be an amazing company, but these guys will just, if you give them more money, they're just going to spend it. And I said, somebody has to run this thing. They're not business people. And they said, well, go run it. And I said, what do you mean? I'm like at Goldman Sachs. So I go into Bill Keeley, and he said, you're out of your freaking mind. You're friend with this guy, Friedman. He's going to run the firm. You're going to be one of the youngest partners. Just go back to your office and write reports on banks. And I said, yeah, that does make sense. Then I go into Leon Cooperman's office, and I tell him the same story. And he said, well, how much money could you make? And I said, well, I think we could take this thing public in a couple of years. He goes, oh, you got to go. And so I quit and went down and did that. But that was like another sort of breakthrough.
What was the name of that company?
At the time, it was called International Mobile Machines, because the founder wanted it to be like International Business Machines. Turned into InterDigital Corp, and they did so far they've done $6 or $7 billion worth of royalties, because they never ever really went into making everything, but everybody had to use all their technology. Wow. They did 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. They didn't do 5G, but they did everything else, and they did all the initial technical, all the signaling technologies and everything else. And I very quickly, after I did this, figured out I don't know anything about radio frequency engineering, and if we're going to take this public, we need to get a real guy in here. And we did. We got a 4-star general who was running the Signal Corps, and I went back to Wall Street. That was like the
And you didn't go back to Goldman at that time.
No,
you went to
Leon Cooperman's junior strategist. He was like one of the great strategists of all time. His junior strategist turned out to be one of the greatest strategists of all time. And he was at E.F. Hutton, and he told me to come there and work for him there, which I did.
And Fred, you met your wife at a pretty young age.
I did.
And she's part of the journey.
All the way. partners.
So she didn't mind the crazy idea of going to Philadelphia and leaving your nice job.
Because I'm not sounding too good.
What?
I'm going to take a sip of soda.
No, but look, your journey started with taking some chances.
Absolutely.
And I think there's such a great lesson for people there. You know, you could have worked for Goldman Sachs and had a great career.
My father had a laundry company. I could have worked there, and he did industrial laundry and uniform rental and stuff. I could have done that. And in fact, there is another point. I'm not going to take you through everything, but there is another point in our career where they asked, my father and my uncle asked me to come back, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and I said, they want me to come back and run one of the plants and then take over the company. And she said, where would we go? And I said, we'd end up in, we'll either be in Reading, Pennsylvania, or Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
When you say it like that, you're not selling it very hard.
I wasn't selling it hard because I knew who was on the other side of the sales pitch. And she said, let's go to Wall Street.
Yeah, that's great.
And we stayed on Wall Street. And I went through Hutton, and then I went to Lehman. And Lehman was really, or it was fairly early in my career, but it was like I feel like still looking back on 50 years of this, and about sort of 25 that were in the world of investment banking and 25 that were in the world of investing. I still think at Lehman that was my greatest accomplishment, because I had moved on. The president of Hutton had gone to Prudential Securities, which was called Prudential Base then, and he took 3 of us with him from Hutton. So I ended up going there, and I was running research. And then I was solicited by Lehman to come to run research there, because they had a disaster. They really had a very bad research department, because when they merged Shearson and Lehman, there had been a horrible event where the Lehman guy was made the director of research, the Shearson guy was fired. He went around and fired all the Shearson guys and then quit and went to another firm, and all the Lehman guys were just there with no leader. I mean, and it turned into research anarchy over a few years, and it was a big investment bank that didn't have a research department. It makes it really hard to do deals.
And you left Lehman in mid-90s.
Yeah, I did.
And was that when you started drinking wine?
No, I started drinking wine when I was a kid.
Oh, so
it was really crazy.
This is really important.
Really crazy, yeah. When I got out of college, I was drinking like Matous or Gallo from a jug or something like that. And
Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill was my first one. Yeah.
3 of my friends said, we're going over to Tommy's cousin, and this guy was, he was in his 30s. We were just out of college. And we went over to his house, and he said, we're going to have a special wine tonight. And we all went, okay, that sounds fine with us. And he said, I have this thing called Chateau Lafite Rothschild, and it's really good. And he poured some, and we tasted it. And he said, oh, this is really different than anything we've ever had before. He said, this costs $15 a bottle. I said, how could anything possibly ever cost $15 a bottle? I'm paying like $1.75. Like, what is this about? And it caught our attention. And that was really enough for me. That start was enough for me to get me interested.
And so mid-90s?
College. This was like,
you were really,
this was like 70s. And then I when I first went to, in the mid 70s, when I went to New York, and I was at Goldman Sachs, my brother and I took the wine tasting course at the World Trade Center of Blessed Memory and at the Four Seasons restaurant of Blessed Memory. And we took 2 different wine tasting courses, and we got really bit and caught and
so you get it. You've been into wine a lot longer than I have. But with that being said, I'm going to tell you my wine investment banking story. But while we're doing that, the wine with the ring around it, I want you to taste that. Of all my guests so far, you've had the best. I know you have the best wine palate. So I'd love to give your thoughts on that while you're tasting this and while you're thinking about it, Fred. I want to tell you my wine story. 1996. How many years ago? It's a long time ago. 30 years ago. Almost 30 years ago. I was taking my company public, and I was in the Beverly Hills Hotel with my investment banker. And when you take a company public, kind of all the expenses kind of just go under the table. Doesn't really matter. So I'm with my investment banker. The lead was Alex Brown and my chief financial officer. And we're in the hotel and he says, what kind of wine would you drink? I said, I'm not really not into wine. Can I have a Tom Collins? And the guy says, no, seriously, you got to try them. I said, I really don't like wine, you know. Come on, try. Well, you got any white wine? No. So here's the menu. And he hands me the menu, the wine menu. He goes, pick anything you want. Like, geez, like, you know, I want this guy to think I'm don't know anything about anything. And I really didn't. And I see a bottle of wine, and I don't remember it was Mouton or Lafite, but I knew the last word was Rothschild, and it was $800 in 1996. It was probably only worth like $100, right? But that's restaurant working up. So we get the bottle, and I'm like, what can this possibly taste like? And I go like this, and I taste my first. I said, Phil, oh my God, that's like candy. And he goes, yeah, that's fine wine. So for the next 2.5 weeks, we traveled the rest of the country, pitching all the banks, Firm and Sales being one of them. We went to Europe. And 3 days after I got back, I needed to sleep for a while. I went to a friend of mine who actually worked in a liquor store. And I said, teach me about wine. And I will tell you, 6 weeks later, I was at Sotheby's auction, couldn't keep my paddle down.
Wow.
Buying great wine. So you're collecting wine a lot longer than I have, and you have a great palate. What do you think?
I like this. I really do like that. I like the smell. There's a lot going on here, and it's all pleasant to me. So I mean, I really do like this wine. I've never had it. I don't know what it is. As far as I don't know. You know, I'm tasting.
How about regions? Can you?
I'm tasting like Cabernet and Cabernet Franc, and I don't know if either of those are in it, but that's what I taste.
Well, since I made the wine, not personally, but since this is Saddle Hill wine, I will tell you, we got Cabernet Franc. It's a Bordeaux blend. We got Cabernet Franc. We got Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Petit
Unbelievable. Really unbelievable palate.
So,
but this is good. I mean, the Cabernet Franc, when you're in the Bordeaux blends and when you're in the United States, you know, people making Bordeaux blends in the United States, the Cabernet Franc is normally pretty identifiable.
It is.
Compared to other things. And it's become a standalone favorite in Napa too.
Yeah.
People really like
So when I started planting in 2021, I really decided, and I don't know if it was a good decision or not, but we planted 10 acres of Cabernet Franc. So we'll get...
when was that?
2021.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I planted most of my Franc in 22, which we're going to have our first 2025 harvest.
I think 2021 was the first year that I heard everybody in Napa like talking about it.
Franc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when it was really starting to...
It was only a blender.
Yeah.
For forever.
Forever.
And then now you can go in and you can buy Cabernet.
Because I have a friend who was, I mean, you know, a young friend, not my age, who was blending it in the late 90s and 2002, 3, 4, you know, started to really make a lot of it. But he never made a bottle of Cabernet Franc, and he's a great winemaker. Actually,
yeah, and I got
he was the winemaker for this for
we're
a few
talk about
years.
that
We will
one.
get to that.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that. But, you know, I got to tell you, here's, you know, we talk about entrepreneurs and taking risk. You know, I'm sitting here today over, 3 years later from planting that 10 acres of Cabernet Franc. And I'm like, shit, I don't know if it's going to, it's a risk. I took a risk. I'm betting on the fact that it's going to continue to be a great blender, and we're going to sell it a lot into our single variety wines. And what else can we do with it? And I'll tell you something else that's interesting. Our rosé is Cabernet Franc.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we're finding
really
lots of
interesting
uses.
rosé stuff now. Yeah.
And then my winemaker, we have 2 year. He won't touch anything unless it's been on the vines for 3 years, and even then he's a little shaky with bringing it out. And we had 2 year Cabernet Franc. You know what? We made sangria out of it.
Oh.
I mean, I know, like
where did you get the clones from, or where was
Napa.
the fruit? Oh,
Our clones are from Napa. A little bit from the Finger Lakes.
uh-huh.
But most of our clones are from Napa. But
And it does this in Jersey.
Because some of the stuff that you get, I mean, some of the people that, clone Franc and put it in different places, you get really kind of like a crunchy Cabernet Franc taste. This does not have that. This is very true to what you want
we
it to
like
be.
this. This is
very true.
we are pushing the envelope here. It's probably the most expensive New Jersey wine. $70. That's pushing the envelope.
I lived in New Jersey for 30 years, and this is the first wine I've ever had that was made in
There
New
you
Jersey
go.
ever.
Good. I think we were spending
History
$15
in the making.
back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But Bill, it's there's been so many things about Fred's career that fascinate me, and one of them is I look at the Barron's year-end roundtable. To me, must have been unbelievable.
It was really amazing because the people that are on the Barron's year-end roundtable over an extended period of time now for 50 years.
How do you get on it?
Alan Abelson used to run Barron's, and he used to literally pick who would be on, but he would take ideas from staff writers at Barron's. And one of the staff writers at Barron's, before she went to Barron's, had been an editor at Goldman Sachs. And I was friends with her. And when they came to me, things were just changing in the United States when they came to me. And our little group, I had a group there was 3 of us. One of the guys still is one of the greatest economists in the world, a guy named Ed Yardeni, who's still practicing and is still at the absolute top of his craft and is on everything all the time, is like the guy who's been the most accurate for the last at least 10 years. And this other guy, Greg Smith, and I were working on what was going to be different now that Reagan was president. And we basically said everything. You're going to have disinflation, and it's going to be extensive, and it's going to be long lasting. And no one agreed with that. Everybody thought inflation was coming back after the 80 recession. Then you had a double dip in 82. And that's when they came to us, because we were talking about disinflation. They had just done a Barron's article that said E.F. Hutton talks, because that was what their commercials were. And it was Greg Smith and I were interviewed about what we thought about what was going on in the world. And so this whole disinflation thing was really unique and different. And I was not that bright, but I was confident. So this writer knew that, and she went to Abelson and said, "Have this kid on. This kid's got all kinds of stuff to say that's different than everybody else," and blah 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 blah. And actually, there was a guy named Joe Granville who was like a bizarre big shot on Wall Street then. He was a technician, and one of the stocks that I recommended was the cell company that I talked about, International Mobile Machines, which was a little nothing. And he broke out into laughter when he heard me say that and explained what it was. And I was like kind of scared and shocked. But I did it for 5 years, and it was all the best people on Wall Street. And over the 5 years, some of them were old enough that they were starting to retire. But then I was moving into things where there's a real conflict. It was really a conflict being on that and being in the sell side of Wall Street, where you're making these recommendations, because you make the recommendations, then you go in and pump them when you go into the Barron's year-end roundtable and say, it's better. It was better for money managers to be doing it rather than brokers. So there was a natural kind of exit point for me to take away from the potential problems. But it was so much fun listening to all these guys and being a really young guy, listening to these older guys pontificate, and you just got to be an observer and then participate. That was beyond.
It's as good as I thought it was.
It was beyond. Yeah, it was great. It was really interesting.
So when you went, how much after that stint was Cowen?
Oh, it was really long. I mean, I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but basically what happened was, you mentioned it already, but after Lehman Brothers was the most fun, because we took the 15th best research department on Wall Street, and there only were 17, to first in 4 years. And these things usually move like one rank a year. So, and we just got to number 1 in 4 years, and we stayed there. So that was like kind of fame creating for me. And then the firm and sales guys came after me and said, we're going to change, we're buying firm and sales back from Xerox, and we're going to fix it all up, and we want you to help us. And so I went to firm and sales. And after the firm and sales thing, we did fix it up. Some people were cynical about it and said it was becoming Lehman Brothers North, because I and another guy from Lehman Brothers were both hired, and we were bringing people that didn't want to be at Lehman Brothers anymore up there, and it was definitely helping us. It was definitely helping us. But we grew 300% in 3 years. And then a Dutch bank bought us, named ING, and they bought us for 6 times book value, which is just insane. I mean, a bank's never worth that. So that was like amazing. And then I went, a friend of mine who is an Israeli engineer that I had known from buying software from him over the years on Wall Street, he had gone and started to do venture capital deals. And I didn't even know what that meant. But when we sold firm and sales, he came and said, let's do deals. And I said, I don't know what that means. And he says, well, yeah, you do. You know all these different industries, and you know all the best analysts, and you know a lot of stuff. And so we started doing deals together, venture deals, at the time in American financial history when there had never been a bigger wind at the back of venture deals. Like anything we touched, it was just like explosively going up. And it was
at least in the beginning.
The late 90s. Yeah, it was the late 90s. And like anything. And so institutions and other people that we were going to and raising money for deals said, why don't you start a fund? We don't want to have to approve these deals one at a time, just start a fund. So we started a fund the year 2000, which is the worst year ever to have started a venture fund, because you're about to go over the waterfall in March of 2000. And then we spent 9 years earning the people a return on their money. And so I had a venture firm for 9 years that I was running with this other guy. And then at the end of that, he wanted to do it again. And we had done no IPOs that decade. There were only IPOs for companies that were over $1 billion between 2000 and 2009.
Yeah, when I took my company public in '96, we were mid cap.
Yeah.
3 years later, we were small cap.
Yeah.
And it was and it was really, really, really crazy. Matter of fact, so '99 was just a crazy year for me because my company was performing 25-30% organic plus acquisitions.
Wow.
And it was an amazing time, but because of all those venture startups, I remember Priceline, oh my God, the valuation, they didn't have much at all, let alone profit. They didn't even have much sales. And it was companies like that my investors said, well, we're going to pivot out of good companies that are just making money, and we're going to take these flyers, right? Because what am I going to give them, 10, 15% growth a year? They want 50%.
Well, that was right at the time when Julian Robertson, who's one of the greatest hedge fund managers of all time, closed down because he wasn't willing to put money in that crap.
Yeah.
But he was getting outperformed, and all of his clients didn't want to have their money with him anymore.
So
a year later, the whole world collapsed.
So we had an opportunity, and I guess the higher end of my stock was about 28, late 98, and then 99, because of all this stuff that was going on. I'm sitting here at $13, and I'm talking to my bankers. We had 5 bankers and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, nothing you're doing. This is the market. And I said, wow. So you're telling me my personal net worth is now halved because I'm just not popular anymore? That sounds like, pretty bad recipe. So we decided to take the company private. Mm-hmm. Turned out to be amazing. Mm-hmm. Of course, this is typical MO with me on personal real estate and businesses that I sell too low. Mm-hmm. But I'm not much of a gambler. Mm-hmm. And I always had the feeling that never look a profit in the face.
It hasn't hurt you.
No, it hasn't hurt me. But like I said earlier, I make my investors more money than I make myself. But no.
I've seen that happen many, many, many times. Yeah.
And why everyone loves you.
And then, of course, the story got really great after that, and the valuation. I mean, it was on the private markets. It went again public in 2005, which I had already left the business. But the bankers, I would probably say that when I left my first business in 2002, the bankers, I had so many great relationships, and they're relationship guys, right? Relationship
Absolutely.
folks. And treat them right. Don't sugarcoat. Don't screw over the analyst, right?
Yeah.
Don't make them look like a bad guy, but you can't give them the inside scoop because they're analysts, right?
Fair.
And there was always that Chinese wall.
Yes.
Now, the Chinese wall came down after the WorldCom
Yes.
debacle. But you never knew, why did my stock, matter of fact, we were looking to sell the business while we were public to W.W. Granger. It was a pretty high flyer. I mean, at the time they were $7 billion. And I remember the price was 24, and I think at the time we were trading at 22. And I said, I'm all in on this. And then you just tell somebody in the banking community, and next thing you know,
boom,
it's all screwed.
Yeah.
Like I literally just, so the saying is loose lips sink ships, right? And there's no better truth than you got to keep your mouth shut on Wall Street.
100%. And even if you do, sometimes other people aren't. So you can't even totally control it. Yeah, without doubt. But then, the interesting part that kind of got me going on the other side was that 2000 to 2009 was really interesting for me, watching it from like originally him being trained as a strategist, because he came into it and everybody was convinced that stocks were the best thing in the world. The people everybody owned stocks and they were all going to go up, 10% a year. That was like a God-given right. And no one paid any attention that if they go up 20% a year, like we've had the last couple of years, that maybe you're ahead of yourself and there's going to be a comeuppance. And there was such a big comeuppance in 2000, 2001, 2002, that people just they couldn't understand how they had been lied to, that they weren't going to get 10% a year and that they lost money. So then they went for this other, that Wall Street, had to find something new because that's what they do. So they went for this other bait, which was that, well, the price of houses never goes down. So then you had a whole decade of people just buying houses and, people that had a regular job buying 6 houses and leveraging up and all this other stuff until you got to the point where all the mortgages were being falsified and accommodating every action that took place. And you got to this huge housing collapse. And then people are going, oh my God, what do I do now? Gold's been doing nothing. Stocks were bad and they're good and then they're bad, really bad. And now houses are bad. And what do I do with my money? Everything was bad. Yeah.
So you mentioned 2009. So we all know what happened in 2008 and 9. Yeah. So I start collecting wine in 96. And of course I went to all the high-end Napa wines because I want to get on the mailing list. You can't buy those wines, right?
Right.
So from 96, I'm on Scream Eagle's mailing list. And in 2009, it was 10. I think they sent me a letter. And they said, you're on, all the hedge fund guys that were paying a stupid amount of money for a bottle of wine can't afford it anymore, right? So this next wine, Fred, is 2009 Screaming Eagle.
Wow.
And this was the first This is the first Screaming Eagle that I was able to buy for a dumb freaking amount of money. But it's actually probably one of my best investments because it's probably 4x.
Yeah.
What was your first, when you raised your paddle for the first time?
Yeah, so that was actually a funny story. Where's my bride? We went to Sotheby's, and I had done a lot of homework. I became a student of Robert Parker. I had a list. I knew exactly you get the catalog. And but I'm getting caught up because I'm super competitive, and I don't want to lose. So when somebody says, we got a case of 82 Lafite, and I'm doing the auction thing. And I'm like, shit, I really want to own this. So I broke my own rules. I had it written down, what I wanted to pay, and I went over. But anyway, long story short, we go to check out that night. And the lady says, that'll be $53,200. I need 2 credit cards for this one. And that's kind of how that whole story started. But what I learned, and it took me a couple years to learn it, you got to stay disciplined on buying anything.
Yeah.
And especially wine. So Sotheby's and Christie's had you could fax your bid in. Because once I got in that room and I saw the guy outbidding me, I just it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But if I faxed in my bid,
Then you're disciplined. That's it.
that was it. So I'd wake up in the morning. It would go out all night long. I'd wake
That's
up.
really interesting because I don't go to auctions anymore for the same reason.
Oh, you get caught up.
I just bid, and if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. And
And-
I'll live okay if I don't get it.
But it was like it was like throw enough shit against the wall. So I would fax my bids in, and I would maybe bid on 25, 30 wines to get one.
Yeah.
But that's how, as I learned,
Yeah,
that's how
what
I
you do.
didn't get my ass kicked on
That's what you
valuation,
do.
and that's why my collection back there is.
It's
Good.
no different. It's just discipline in your
Yeah,
purchasing
discipline in
investment.
everything.
Yep.
You're right. No, you're right.
Right.
But now let's share this.
Yeah,
You're going to
this
share
is,
so much great stuff with us. Let's
So
share everything.
I think the Saddle Hill is better than that. Just kidding.
Okay. Well, it's different. This is just cab.
I think it is 100%, right?
Yeah, it should be.
100%.
I think so.
We had a Colgan on our last episode. That was only 87%.
Oh yeah, Colgan.
13.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we had the 10 estate. So I guess because they do call it a Cabernet Sauvignon. In California, it has to be all Cabernet Sauvignon. It can't be like in New Jersey. It's an 85%.
No, this is great.
Yeah, this is pretty
This
special,
is
right?
it.
Yeah.
We need a steak, right?
The first I was going to tell you the first bottle of Screaming Eagle that I ever opened, I had with hamburgers,
Ha!
and it was great. We had big, thick, juicy hamburgers.
Fries?
No fries.
I want to know the restaurant that hamburgers and Screaming Eagle.
No, it was my backyard.
Okay.
Fred, you in our wine club, I don't remember the name. You have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different wines, but you really have an Italian.
I do.
You really love Italian wine.
I do. And I just had the best wine experience of my life in Italy. Did I tell you about
No,
it?
you didn't share
No,
it.
I didn't tell you.
Remember, we're back here at camp.
Oh yeah. So we went. It was my 75th birthday this past September, and my wife and I went to Italy, and we went to Lake Como, and we went to Milan, which we love both of those places. But then we drove down to Barbaresco, and I had gone through this. I knew all the details. You basically can't. There's a lot of amazing wine places in Italy that you can go to. One of the places that you can't go to is Gaia. Angelo Gaia makes amazing stuff in Barbaresco. And so I explored the whole thing. And basically, if you offer to give a charitable contribution to the local hospital, they will have the head of marketing take you around and show you the place.
Oh my God, I didn't
So
know
I,
that.
so I said, okay, we're going to do this. So we did it. And we show up, and the head of marketing comes out, and she grabs us, and she brings us in. And Andrea and I are talking to her. She takes us into her room, and she starts telling us about some of the things on the wall. And I'm completing her stories. And then we go to the next room, and she's telling us about this one wine and the whole story. And I was telling her stuff she didn't know about it. And she said, wait a minute, we don't get a lot of people like you here. And she just like runs out of the room. And Angelo Gaia walks in. And he spends an hour talking to us, not about wine, just about life. And then he brings Gaia, who's his daughter, in, who's the CEO of the company, and she does an hour tasting with us from her library. So it was the best.
Yeah.
I
So
ever had.
for our viewers, listeners, Gaia is probably the gold standard
Yeah.
for Italian wine, and
And-
they're all over with Barbesco and
Fascinating guy, because when his father was making Barbaresco 40 years ago, Barbaresco was table wine that cost like $7. It was nothing, and there was like 15 makers, and they all made crappy wine. And he decided we have all the stuff here to do this. We have the ground, we have the right terroir, we have the right sun angles, we have the right stuff in the ground. We just have to bring in the right clones, and we don't have to just make Nebbiolo, we can do everything. And he starts changing everything about how they did wine there. And all the Barbaresco people copied him, and they turned Barbaresco from a nothing into a big something, and they all got rich off of one guy's vision and really work. So
and it is, so if you take the U.S., you can really say that it's the West Coast, Napa's particularly, that's really driving the price market in the whole country, unlike Italy, where you have the Tuscan regions outside of Florence, and then the Piemonte region, where we're talking about Barbesco and Barolo, which my wife and I just spent some time there in June. Now, from a vacation or anything other, I kind of really prefer the Tuscan region.
Of course.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on there.
We love Tuscany. I mean, we love Tuscany. We went to Barbesco for one day.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and that's all.
Yes,
that's all we were doing that trip. We weren't gonna.
Have you had any GD Vajra?
Yes.
We met Giuseppe. We drank some wine with Giuseppe, and as it turns out, his U.S. importer is based in Philadelphia.
Oh, really?
So he promises us a visit this year to Saddle Hill.
Great.
So we're excited about that.
And Northern Italy has some people like that. They have individuals who are amazing wine craft people that really have taken wherever they are in Northern Italy and made stuff. But Tuscany is a whole different thing. Tuscany is just like an amazing place to hang out and do stuff and visit and see. Amazing.
Everything.
Andrew and I have seen some amazing things in Tuscany. We went to one guy's vineyard, and he had at least a 1 mile driveway, and along the driveway up to his house, he had airplanes all along the driveway, including like a Russian MiG, the most amazing airplanes. And when you got up to his house, the top floor was every motorcycle ever made. I mean, like what's that from? And there's like a lot of ancient history in some of the towns in Tuscany. Really, it's just
it's really,
Italy's amazing. Italy's amazing.
Yeah, I think if somebody said to me, "You can't live in the United States anymore,"
me too.
Both of you.
Yeah,
it's as world travelers, that says a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Fred, just taking it back slightly to your career and the whole path you went on. Any words you would have to a young, like-minded business student, didn't know what he wanted to do today? Education's taken some strange turns in our country. You got an MBA from one of the elite schools in the world, in Wharton. What words would you have for somebody, the young Fred Fraenkel?
I actually don't think that the school's curriculum is where you get any dramatic insight. I think it's the practice of whatever your business is that gives you the opportunity to either add or supplant something that's going on in your company, in your industry, in the world, et cetera. When I mentioned that my best accomplishment as Lehman Brothers, when we turned around that research department, that wasn't just, it wasn't like the Yankees. We weren't just going out and buying analysts. We were growing analysts, and we were growing a culture. And a lot of that gets down to, what did you observe that you thought was wrong? I had observed a few things. I had observed that there weren't any training programs on Wall Street. People were just sort of trying to figure out from other people how to do stuff, and you could formalize that and improve things. I also figured out that the management of very smart and very accomplished people can't be done well in a normal pyramid kind of hierarchy. You normally look at it and you say, okay, here's the boss, and under him there are people that work for him, and then under them those people are the boss, and so on down. To accomplish things that you want to accomplish with people that are really productive, you have to turn that whole pyramid upside down. You basically have to have the boss taking away the problems of the people that report to him. They have to be taking away the problems of the people that report to them. And by the time you get to the top, if all the problems have been taken away for the big mass of people that are working there, you're going to get a lot done, and you're going to accomplish a lot. But that's a cultural item, because you can't feel that that somehow, if you're the boss, you have to have authority and you have to have respect and all those kinds of things. It gets in the way of accomplishment. And those kinds of observations, sometimes business schools are really good at coming up with them and sharing them. But a lot of the time, people have to manufacture that from their own experience base too.
Fred, we're going to wind down.
Sure.
And this is just so, the whole interview here has been wildly intriguing. Like I mentioned to everybody here in this room that you have the best wine palate of any of our guests so far, and that's clearly proven. Give me a couple of your, if you can just, roll back the tape in your mind 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Two things you're most proud of. And not business-wise, right? Like we know or maybe it's family.
Wine-wise?
No. Oh, yeah, anything. Well, wait a minute. Because you've had such an iconic business career, why don't we give me two business ones?
The things that I'm most proud of. Yeah, sure. The last thing I did, I'm actually very, very proud of, even though it got totally screwed up. And that's not abnormal. It's not abnormal. But when I went to Cowen, to help them figure out what they wanted to do. And they knew they were going to get this company to a point where they could sell it. So that was going to happen. But after I was there for a very short period of time, the CEO and the presidents took me aside and said, look, our asset management company's all screwed up. Would you fix it? And I said, well, I don't think that's fair because I made a deal with you. I'm going to be in Florida half the time, in New York half the time, and you have all these really great people on that platform that are really looking for guidance, and I would only be there half the time. They said, well, that's okay, do it. So I said, okay, I'll try to do that. And the first year was very rugged because they had a lot of very bad pieces, and they had to be fired. And I'm not trying to say that I was Donald Trump, you're fired kind of thing, but I was. Yeah. We literally had to go through, and if you weren't going to offer something that was going to be good for your investor clients, you got to get rid of it. So we got rid of it, and it was about half the place was gone. And then we had to figure out,
well, you must have been real popular.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. In fact, I'm not even going to mention, but there's a guy in our community who was not directly involved, but was ancillarily involved. And he heard from his friends that I'm like a Black Hood kind of guy, and he doesn't even look at me when I see him. So I mean, it definitely didn't help me in that regard. But then we figured out that Cowen was good at certain things. And if we were going to be credible at delivering good investment products for people, we'd have to do in those things. We were really good in biotechnology. We were really good in green technology. There's things we were really good at that are important. So we went on a tear to build those products, and we were just super duper successful at it. We got some of the biggest investors in the world to invest in our funds. We raised a whole lot of money, billions of dollars for our funds. And then eventually the company was sold, and the bank that bought us didn't want any of that. So they basically just gave it back to the portfolio managers that were running it, which is great for them because they have their own little assets.
That was TD Bank.
TD Bank, yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I did not know that TD Bank was going to get caught doing bad stuff in the United States and be fined billions of dollars. I didn't know any of that stuff. But the day of the TD Bank closing, I resigned and retired.
And that was?
February of 2023.
Newly retired. You're not bored yet?
There are days when I'm not as busy as I would want to be, but
you're still busy.
But in general, I'm still got a lot of stuff going. So that was a big accomplishment. And the other one was back at Lehman Brothers when I took hundreds of people to this party of becoming number one, which couldn't have been more fun.
And what about the wine highlights you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, there are wine highlights. I love this Gaia thing because it just happened, and because it was Angelo Gaia is bigger than life, and he's an amazing person. But as far as like on the wine stuff, I had an almost, people overuse phrases. They said, "Oh, I had a religious experience tasting this wine." It wasn't religious, but I had a tremendously awakening experience tasting Domaine Romani Conte for the first time in Burgundy. I mean, it really, I knew it was like one of the most expensive wines in the world. It was one of the rarest wines in the world. I knew there's only 5 vineyards that are all as big as this table, all the essential elements. And I knew it was going to be good, but it really is a special event to taste and drink that. So
I've never had a DRC.
Oh, well.
I've never had one.
The next time that we go out, I'll bring one.
I think we should not waste that wine on our wine club friends. I think The four of us should go out to dinner.
Absolutely.
To one of the great restaurants down here in South Florida. You bring wine.
Let's do it.
I'll bring a Bordeaux killer.
Let's do it. The
Burgundy
problem
killer.
is you
Sounds like a
can't
plan.
go to Keller's restaurant in Miami Beach because they have it on the wine list and they won't let you bring it. Every time I go there, which is a great restaurant, but like I'm always, it's like a game. You have to take out their wine list and try and find something great that's not on it that you can bring. So I mean, that's
Well, they had some training from French Laundry.
And what do they charge you for
absolutely.
that corking fee?
It's up to $250.
Yeah.
It's insanity except when you look at the wine list, you get a crappy bottle of wine for $400. So like,
Yeah, it's a good deal. Well,
so you bring one of yours and you pay the $250. You know, it's
we
like,
went to the French Laundry. This is many years ago, and I brought a bottle of Bordeaux and paid $200 the quart.
yeah. French Laundry per se, and
Yeah.
and the one in Florida they're fabulous restaurants. They truly are. Yeah.
Fred, thanks for the wine, business, and life stories. They're all fabulous. An amazing 75 years with, I think, a whole lot more to go.
Thanks.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We'll see you next time on Uncorked.
Cheers.